Hey everyone, today we're going to do something a little different. We're reaching way back, thousands of years, into the book of Leviticus, of all places. And together we're going to uncover what the ancient priesthood can teach us about the huge, profound responsibility of serving a holy God. It sounds like a pretty strange question, right? I mean, a world of animal sacrifices, specific rituals. It all feels so far removed from our boardrooms, our churches, and our teams today. But as you'll see, the principles behind their service, the sheer gravity of it, the preparation, the accountability, well, they are more relevant than ever. So here's the journey we're about to take. We're going to start with a foundational truth that applies to every single believer. From there, we'll look at the unique kind of preparation required for a leader. We'll confront a really stark warning about the dangers of that role, and then we'll learn what it actually means to handle holy things. And finally, we'll bring it all home, applying these ancient rules to how we lead today. Okay, first things first. Before we can even begin to talk about leaders in a special sense, we absolutely have to get our heads around a core New Testament idea that just changes everything: the priesthood of all believers. This right here is our starting line. You see, because of Jesus, the temple veil was torn. That means every single believer has direct access to God. We can all worship freely. We can all offer up our lives as spiritual sacrifices. But, and you've got to catch this is the critical distinction for any leader, that universal access doesn't erase a unique responsibility. Leaders are entrusted with a priestly-like role, not as some higher class, but as stewards and as examples. So, if leaders have this unique responsibility, what does it actually require? Well, it requires a unique preparation. In the book of Leviticus, a priest didn't just wake up one morning and decide, hey, I think I'll start serving today. No way. They were first set apart by God himself. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of the matter. Leadership isn't fundamentally about your skills or your charisma. It's about your character. The work that God does in a leader privately behind the scenes is the non-negotiable foundation for anything they do in public. To put it simply, your private life always precedes your public role. And we see this whole process laid out for us so clearly in Leviticus chapter 8. The priests were washed, that signified cleansing. They were given brand new clothing, which stood for their new identity. They were anointed with oil for consecration, being set apart. And finally, a sacrifice was made for their atonement. Every single step was absolutely essential before they could even think about beginning their sacred work. And this leads to a profoundly freeing truth. You serve from a place of acceptance, not for it. Just think about that for a second. Even the high priest, the holiest person in all of Israel, first needed a sacrifice for his own sin. Service is always a response to grace. It is never, ever a way to earn it. But why? Why is all this preparation so incredibly vital? Well, because the stakes of leadership are just sky high. And this brings us to a very sobering, very famous story from Leviticus, a permanent warning sign for every single person who dares to lead. Let me introduce you to two guys, Nadab and Abihu. Now, these weren't just some random people. They were the sons of Aaron, the high priest. They had a front row seat to the glory of God. They had just been ordained in that very ceremony we were talking about. I mean, they had every privilege you could possibly imagine. But then they did something that was just disastrous. They took their fire pans, they put incense on them, and they offered what the Bible calls strange fire, or some translations say unauthorized fire. What does that mean? In essence, they decided to innovate. They approached God on their own terms, not on the terms that he had clearly commanded. The consequence was immediate, and it was terrifying. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 2 puts it this way: "So fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord." It's just a shocking moment that hammers home the seriousness of their role. The principle here is crystal clear, and it's pretty sobering. Proximity to God actually increases accountability. It doesn't mean you get more leeway. It means you're held to a higher standard. God isn't more tolerant of leaders. He's more exacting. And their sincerity, whatever it may have been, was no substitute for simple obedience. Okay, so if leadership is that dangerous, that risky, what's the solution? The rest of the book of Leviticus gives us the answer. Holiness isn't a one-time event at your ordination. It's a state that has to be constantly and carefully sustained. So what are the holy things a modern leader handles? Just think about it for a minute. Teaching God's word, that is a holy thing. Counseling and shepherding God's people, that is a holy thing. Leading others in worship, that's a holy thing. These aren't just items on a to-do list. They are sacred trusts. And this is exactly why Leviticus 21 lays out such strict personal requirements for the priests. The principle is unavoidable. There can be no divide, none, between a leader's private life and their public ministry. Their personal conduct, their relationships, how they manage their own family, it's all part of their qualification. In leadership, you are always on duty because your character is never off duty. All right, let's bring all this home. Let's pull these threads together and reframe how we see leadership today, but through the lens of these ancient, powerful, and timeless rules. Let's be perfectly crystal clear about what a leader's role is. Leaders are not mediators. Jesus is the only one. They are not a higher spiritual class, and they are not spiritually superior. So what are they? They are stewards of what is holy. They are examples to the flock. And they are accountable servants, who, as the New Testament warns us, will face a stricter judgment. You know, this statement really captures the essence of everything we've talked about. Leadership is not about being a gatekeeper or some kind of spiritual celebrity. It's about stewardship. It's about faithfully handling God's word, God's people, and God's worship, all while living right there in the presence of the community. So we end with this final charge. The work of leadership is an incredible and a dangerous privilege. And it's a privilege that demands our reverence, our careful obedience, and our unwavering integrity. So the question for each of us is simply this: are we handling it with the care it requires?